Hey guys, welcome back. Now let's get started with our day 11 walkthrough. So here the learning objectives are understanding the Active Directory, introduction to Windows Hello for Business, prerequisites for exploiting generic write privilege, how the shadow credentials attack works, how to exploit the vulnerability. Active Directory. Active Directory is a system mainly used for businesses in Windows environments. It's a centralized authentication system. The domain controller is the heart of the Active Directory and typically manages the data storage, authentication, and authorization within a domain. You can think of Active Directory as a digital database containing objects like users, groups, and computers, each with specific attributes and permissions. Ideally, it applies the principle of least privilege and uses a hierarchical approach to managing roles and giving authenticated users access to all non-sensitive data throughout the system. For this reason, assigning permission to users must be approached cautiously, as it can potentially compromise the entire Active Directory. Microsoft introduced Windows Hello for Business as a modern and secure way to replace conventional password-based authentication. Instead of relying on traditional passwords, Windows Hello for Business utilizes cryptographic keys for user verification. Users on Active Directory domain can access the AD using a PIN or biometrics connected to a pair of cryptographic keys, public and private. Those keys help to prove the identity of the entity to which they belong. The MSDS key credential link is an attribute used by the domain controller to store public key in Windows Hello for Business for enrolling a new user device. In short, each user object in Active Directory database will have its public key stored in a unique attribute. Here's the procedure to store a new pair of certificates with Windows Hello for Business. Trusted Platform Module Public-Private Key Pair Generation. The TPM creates a public-private key pair for the user's account when they enroll. It's crucial to remember that the private key never leaves the TPM and is never disclosed. Client Certificate Request. The client initiates a certificate request to receive a trustworthy certificate. The organization certificate issuing authority receives this request and provides a valid certificate. Key storage. The user account's MSDS key credential link attribute will be set. Authorization. The domain controller decrypts the client's pre-authentication data using raw public key stored in the MSDS key credential link attribute of the user's account. Now let's go and fire up our machine. Enumeration. Now is your chance to shine and ensure no security misconfigurations are lurking in the shadows. So let's get started by dusting off our magnifying glasses. Enumerating the Active Directory for vulnerable permission is the first step to check if the current user has any write capabilities over any other user on the Active Directory. To achieve this, you can use the PowerShell script PowerView with the following command. This functionality will list all abusive privileges. It's then possible to filter out the current user. Here we are filtering out HR. We are specifically looking for any write privileges since the goal is to override the MSDS key credentials link from the vulnerable machine. Launch PowerShell, which is pinned to your taskbar, and enter the following commands. So this is the first command. It moves to the folder containing all exploitation tools. Here's the next command, which will bypass the default policy for arbitrary PowerShell script execution. And this loads the PowerView script into the memory. As you may see, this command will return all user privileges. Since we are specifically looking for the current user, which is HR, we need to filter it out. You can do that by using this command. We are interested in the current user, the vulnerable user, and the privilege assigned. So here we are adding two filters. So finally, using the pipes, this will be a final command. As you can see from the previous output, the user HR has the generic write permission over the administrator object visible on the CN attribute. Later, we can compromise the account with the privilege by updating the MSDS key credential link with a certificate. This vulnerability is known as shadow credentials attack. So now let's open up the PowerShell here. So now let's follow these instructions. Here we can see that the HR user has generic write permissions over the Van Sprinkles account. So this means that we can later override the MSDS key credential link attribute with a certificate and then log in as Van Sprinkles user on the domain. So coming to exploitation, One helpful tool for abusing the vulnerable privilege is Whisker, a C-sharp utility created by Lad Shammer. Using Whisker is straightforward. Once we have a vulnerable user, we can run the add command from Whisker to simulate the environment of malicious device, updating the MSDS key credential link attribute. This task can be accomplished by running the following command. So let's type in this command. Here our user is Van Sprinkles. So this tool will conveniently provide the certificate necessary to authenticate the impersonation of the vulnerable user with a command ready to be launched using Rubus. The core idea behind the authentication is AD is using the Kerberos protocol, which provides tokens. TGT stands for Ticket Grant Ticket for each user. A TGT can be seen as a session token that avoids the credentials prompt after the user authentication. Rubus, a C-sharp toolset designed for direct Kerberos interaction and exploitation, was developed by SpectreOps, a parse-hash attack. You can continue the exploitation by asking for a TGT of a vulnerable user using the certificate granted in the previous command. Once you have obtained the certificate, you can acquire a valid TGT and impersonate the vulnerable user. Additionally, the NTLM hash of the user account can be displayed in the console output, which can be used for the parse-hash attack. You can continue the exploitation by asking for a TGT of a vulnerable user using the certificate generated in the previous command. So this is the command here. So here ask TGT will make a request to obtain the TGT. Here in the user we have to provide the user we want to impersonate for the TGT. And then we have to provide the certificate we generated with the password used for decoding the certificate since it's encrypted. The domain here is the target domain. And get credentials, this flag will retrieve the NTLM hash which will be used in the next step. And DC stands for the domain controller that will generate the TGT. So now let's go ahead and copy this here. Don't forget to add the dot slash over here. Now let's paste it here. You can now execute a parse-hash attack using the NTLM hash obtained from the previous command. This attack involves leveraging the encrypted password stored in the domain controller rather than relying on plain text password. To do this, you can use EvilWin RM, a tool for remotely managing Windows systems abusing the Windows Remote Management Protocol. So this is the command. So now we got our hash here. So let's enter this command on attack machine. Make sure you have changed the user to Van Sprinkles and the hash to your corresponding hash. Conclusion. We have stumbled upon a misconfiguration after all. In this scenario, an attacker could gain full access to our Active Directory, posing a severe threat to the entire anti-graft security system. As for our recommendations, we'll emphasize on cybersecurity's golden rule, the principle of least privilege. By strictly adhering to this principle, we can limit the access to only what's necessary for each user or system, significantly reducing the risk of such a devastating compromise. So now we got a shell here. What is the hash of the vulnerable user? So we have a hash here, let's copy it. So coming to the next question, what is the content of flag.txt on administrator desktop? So let's try to navigate there. Okay, so now we found the flag.txt file, let's read it. So let's copy a flag. So now we have completed day 11's walkthrough. Thank you for watching my video and stay tuned for more.